Yee! Welcome in to an emergency podcast. This emergency podcast is brought to you by Indeed. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. That's Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And Jesse, the Diamondbacks needed Indeed. And what I needed is some personal time to have interest outside of baseball. I'm out here trying to, live my best life. I got my Deadpool action going on, Jesse. I got my morally ambiguous popcorn bucket. And instead, once again, while I'm at the movies with Megaran, I get interrupted by a notification that the Arizona Diamondbacks have once again done something. And of course, here we go. They did do something. They did the thing that we've been talking about, and they went out and they got themselves a left-handed reliever. Let's go, Jesse. What happened here? What did they do?
Derek, the Arizona Diamondbacks, we just got word, have traded a couple of prospects, a couple of bigger name prospects for them. Andrew Pintar, who's an outfielder down in AA, as well as Davison De Los Santos, who we've talked about a lot this year, has been raking in AAA. And in exchange, they get left-handed reliever AJ Puk from the Miami Marlins. If we look at AJ Puk's numbers for the season, it might not, these numbers won't jump out to you necessarily. If we can get that on the screen, it's a 4.30 ERA in 44 innings, a 1.34 whip, 9.2 Ks per nine, 4.7 walks per nine, a 3.62 FIP. If you're wondering why the Diamondbacks gave up what feels like a lot looking at numbers like this, I bring you to our next graphic, which is AJ Puk's numbers, specifically when he's been used as a reliever this season. He spent the first 4 outings of the season actually as a starter, something he had never done before in his major league career. It did not work. So the Marlins made him back into a reliever, and Derek, he was absolutely sensational. 30 and a third innings as a reliever this season, a 2.08 ERA, 0.76 whip, 9.8 Ks per nine, 1.8 walks per nine. And honestly, this last number maybe captures how dominant he's been, better than anything else. A 456 OPS for opposing hitters against him while he's been in there as a reliever. He is someone we probably would have gotten to. We hadn't talked about him yet as a potential trade deadline target for the D-backs, but someone who certainly made sense for the Diamondbacks to be interested in. And he is a left-handed reliever. We talked about how the D-backs interested in potentially a lefty or a righty, as long as it was someone who could pitch in the back end. But I think we all know that a lefty was always going to be the ideal scenario. Give Joe Mantiply someone else out there as a, sort of partner in crime as a left-handed reliever. So this was a big move, and Puk is a really big acquisition for the Diamondbacks here just before the trade deadline.
Let's take a look at the season numbers again, not with just the relief numbers, but the season numbers. This is what people are looking at when they pull up AJ Puk's numbers. And again, Jesse, like you said, this is why things don't look great for him just overall. But this includes 4 starts, which he started the first 4 games he pitched this season. He allowed 14 earned runs in 13 2/3 innings pitched as a starter. So it really inflated those stats. Of course, one thing that we have talked about in the past is the Diamondbacks acquisition of Ryan Thompson last season. And we know how good tea time has been for this team, not to mention for me personally to have somebody to talk about pro wrestling with in the clubhouse. But Ryan Thompson has been incredible, Jesse. And of course, it was kind of the same scenario with him a little bit, not that he started, but that it only took a few games to really inflate that ERA and make his numbers overall kind of look bad when the Rays, I guess, looked at who they thought could be expendable from their bullpen. They, I guess, incorrectly chose Ryan Thompson because he has been an absolute asset for this team. AJ Puk could be just a huge sigh of relief for the Diamondbacks. His numbers as a reliever are incredible. That 2.08 ERA, 9.8 strikeouts per 9, but the 1.8 walks per 9, that's really something there. It's the weapon that he is as a left-handed pitcher out of the bullpen. The Diamondbacks currently only have Joe Mantiply. And I mean, this is exactly the kind of pitcher the Diamondbacks were looking for. It did cost them a bit, and it cost them a little more than, maybe they wanted to give up. But in the end, they were able to part ways with guys that we just talked about today, at least one of those, in Davison De Los Santos. And he has been raking this year. I don't want to take anything
Yeah.
away from this young man, and I think this could be a tremendous loss for the Diamondbacks. So not trying to get too negative, because I'm very excited about AJ Puck. However, we already lost Davison De Los Santos, and that was the point I had made just on today's show. He was the first name that comes to mind because his value right now couldn't be higher. And then you have the fact that it is like playing with house money a little bit, right? This man was already acquired by the Guardians, and he luckily came back to the Diamondbacks, and now they're able to use him as a trade chip to go out and get a great left-handed reliever like AJ Puck, possibly one of, I mean, at least based on his numbers this season, one of the best left-handed relievers the Diamondbacks have ever had.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we jumped on air. I mean, at least if you think about the Mike Hazen era of this team, Andrew Chafin has had some good stints for the D-backs for sure. Obviously, last year wasn't working so well. The D-backs wound up moving him to the Brewers at the deadline. Jake Diekman is the only other left-handed reliever that Mike Hazen has ever acquired at the deadline. That one didn't go so well, Derek. I think he had a ERA over 7 the rest of the way. Somehow is still pitching in the majors. It feels like Jake Diekman's been around for forever. But yeah, AJ Puck brings a level of dominance as a left-handed reliever. Combined with pretty solid command. I know his walk numbers for the season aren't good, but again, if you just narrow in on when he's been pitching out of the bullpen, he's at 1.8 walks per 9. He has 6 walks and over 30 innings pitched in that role. So the command combination with also the stuff, it's 96 miles an hour from the left side. It's really unlike anything the Diamondbacks have had from the left side out of the bullpen in quite a while. And in turn, as you alluded to, the Diamondbacks gave up a lot in this trade. I said it last year when they traded for Paul Sewald that on paper was an overpay. I think this one you could argue is an overpay on paper as well. Davison De Los Santos, there is a non-zero chance that Davison De Los Santos is hitting between 30 and 40 home runs a year in the major leagues, not all far from now. And he's only 21 years old, I believe. So that chance is absolutely still out there.
And that's just one guy. But the other guy that's part of this deal, center fielder Andrew Pintar from the Hillsboro Hops, had an incredible season up to this point, slashing 304, 403, 516 with a 919 OPS. Another very exciting young player that we've talked about a few times on this team or on this show. And I mean, even though he's kind of far off, there's been some guys on that Hillsboro Hops that have been doing some incredible things, including some of their pitchers as well. You just don't know what these type of guys are going to be. Hillsboro isn't Amarillo or Reno, where when you see a guy hitting 304 with a 516, slugging percentage, that you think that that's inflated due to where he plays. Like it's not the same as those ballparks. So even though it's a high A, it's still some pretty impressive numbers from Pintar.
Yeah, Pintar hasn't been there long, but he did get promoted up to Double-A Amarillo pretty recently. He spent some time out with injury as well, so he hasn't had very many at bats in Double-A at all. He was not faring particularly well there. He was hitting 184 with a 526 OPS in just 10 games played at Double-A. So again, a pretty small sample. But yeah, I mean, Andrew Pintar was a legit prospect for this team. MLB Pipeline had him at number 30 in the Diamondback system. They had De Los Santos, I believe, at number 14 in the D-back system. Pintar was a 5th round draft pick just a couple of years ago and really was coming on strong this year. D-backs were kind of trying to figure out where to play him. He came up as a shortstop, struggled a little bit in the infield. They decided to move him to center field and seemed like he'd been progressing fairly well in that spot. But yeah, again, like the D-backs gave up quite a bit in this trade. Davison De Los Santos by himself felt like a pretty big price for a reliever. Andrew Pintar is very much a legitimate prospect in his own right as well at Double-A at 23 years old. So it's a big price to pay, but it's also what I don't think we've mentioned yet. You're not just getting AJ Puck for the rest of the season as you would have with a lot of the other relief pitcher candidates we talked about. You're getting him through the end of 2026. And that's a pretty big deal that the D-backs have theoretically one of the better left-handed relievers in baseball under control, not just for this season, but for the next 2 seasons as well.
There's been a few comments in the chat about worrying about that at a later time in regards to the progression of someone like DDLS or Pintar, right? Like Davis and De Los Santos, we've never had a problem admitting he was going to hit the crap out of the ball. It's a matter of do the other factors of his game, just like a couple of other guys the Diamondbacks have in Reno, like they're mashing. It's just, can they play defense at a major league level? And if they can't, then their value isn't really there. Not to mention the fact that you still have to hit in the majors, which is different. It's not like the Guardians didn't give De Los Santos a chance there. They just, by taking him in the Rule 5 draft, had no choice but to either roster him or basically give him back to the Diamondbacks. And ultimately, that's what they did, because he wasn't ready yet to play at a major league level. I agree with Jesse 100% on this, that there is going to be a day where this man is going to torment us for trading him away. There's no doubt about it.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think that's a guarantee at all. But I think it's a possibility for sure.
Now, on the other hand, I do just want to admit that sometimes in life, you have to be okay with the fact that you did already lose this player. He somehow made it back to you, just like when, you DFA a guy and he clears waivers and then still makes it back to, the team or something of the sort, right? It's good that he came back, but if the Diamondbacks were going to trade away a prospect that's having a great season right now, this was the guy to do it with. This was the guy of value. It's the reason why he was the first name that I thought of earlier today. Someone said I jinxed him. I would disagree and just suggest that I'm very smart and good at my job. But I would also say that it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, really, when you think about it, the Diamondbacks have some very young, talented prospects that I'm sure they're getting some phone calls on that they don't want to trade. But when you have to look at things realistically and the way things went down with that Rule 5 draft, with losing him to the Guardians, it's kind of, again, like playing with house money. The bigger thing here is the Diamondbacks are now in a position where they are adding to this team and trying to win a championship now. I was thinking about this with the Texas Rangers, Jesse, because their season isn't exactly going the way they wanted to. And there was discussion that the Rangers might end up being sellers at the trade deadline. Their GM said, there comes a time where I have to start, looking at when we can win our next championship, and that might be further down the road. They got their championship, right? And so, like, the Rangers are satisfied, and they can kind of be okay with, even though they're defending champs, kind of having a mediocre season and maybe waving the white flag here a little bit at the trade deadline to try to prove their team down the road, because they don't think that they have a chance this season at winning another championship. There are windows sometimes, and the Diamondbacks might very, very possibly be in their window to win a championship. We didn't think it was going to be this early. We didn't think they would do what they did in last year's, postseason, but they're in a different position than the Rangers. They didn't get the job done, and they feel like they still very much have the team here to compete for a championship this season. I feel like they just secured a player that can solidify their bullpen, which has been a problem at times this year, give Torrey options late in the game with a high leverage guy. And they got what Mike Hazen wanted, which is, a guy that is going to be part of this organization beyond just the end of this year. They didn't mortgage these two young studs for a rental that's going to be gone here in 6 months.
I mean, if we just look at the Diamondbacks bullpen right now, like, got to feel pretty good about this group, right? I mean, in the back end, you've got Paul Sewald, Kevin Ginkel, Ryan Thompson, Justin Martinez, AJ Puck. Joe Mantiply has certainly pitched some big innings this year for the team. He'll probably, take a step back, I would imagine, to Puck in the highest leverage situations, but I'm sure he'll still be pitching in big spots. And then, you've also got Bryce Jarvis. The D-backs are going to have to make a roster move. I'm not totally sure what this means for Miguel Castro. I imagine that Miguel Castro will stick around, and Thiago Vieira will be the odd man out here from a roster standpoint. We'll see kind of what that moves looks like. I imagine this will be made official pretty soon here. We'll get that move here in the next 24 hours before tomorrow's game. But that's a good group. I mean, that's one of the best bullpens in baseball. I feel pretty comfortable saying I'm not saying it's the best necessarily, but that's a bullpen where if you're in the later innings and you're facing one of the better teams in the league, you've got weapons to get just about anybody out, and a variety of weapons to go to. We saw the D-backs in that finale against the Cubs, right? We talked about this in our post-game show for that game, where they'd used kind of their big four relievers on back-to-back days, and Justin Martinez was the only guy they were comfortable going to for a third straight day. And they just felt like they were out of weapons. And for J Mart, it was a tough spot to be in because he was on his third straight day for the first time this season. The more weapons that you can add, you avoid those situations. You allow yourself to be aggressive using your relievers and know that the next day you're still going to have enough guys who are ready to go and help you finish off some games.
Well, of course, the Diamondbacks didn't need to worry about hiring because they got Mike Hazen to do that for them. But you need to hire, you need Indeed. Check out Indeed.com. We're all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. It isn't to hunt and peck. Don't search, match with Indeed. And Indeed will do exactly that. Of course, if you need a left-handed reliever, it's probably not going to be that easy because there's not a lot of them out there. And of course, if you are looking to fill a particular position, you might not have a lot of options, but Indeed will find more options for you. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. According to a recent Indeed survey, they leverage over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, and their matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences when you're on there using it. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on the PHNX Diamondbacks show. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire, you need Indeed. And of course, I need beer. I need more beer, Jesse. A great place to do that is to stop by Circle K and check out their beer cave. They have a wonderful variety, including our friends from Four Peaks that you can find there. It's America's thirst stop. And yes, they have the Polar Pops and the Frosters, but they also have the ice cold beers. So check out Circle K. Join the Inner Circle for free right now by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. But when you do, you'll save all sorts of money in the app, including on these delicious beverages. Jesse, the big question now, and I'm sure many people in the chat are wondering this, including me, probably you, because we have no way to really answer it, but are they done? Is this it? I know that obviously we've heard that they had other needs. Mike Hazen discussed other players that they might target, but this acquisition of AJ Puck definitely checks a lot of boxes on what Mike was looking for in one guy, right? Help from the bullpen, left-handed, controllable, all of that is done. But we know that the Diamondbacks are still potentially looking at like a right-handed outfielder, maybe an infielder. Do you think that we'll see these moves get done? Do you think there'll be more moves considering how early this one got done and this one being basically the most important?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the real answer here. I'm sure we'll talk with Mike here pretty soon and kind of get his perspective on where things go from here. But based on the conversations that I had with him over the weekend in Chicago, it wouldn't shock me if the D-backs were done. I mean, this was the thing on the to-do list that seemed achievable and also seemed like it would clearly move the needle for this team. They had a need for another reliever, especially a left-handed reliever, and AJ Puck is, on paper, a great solution to that problem. Outside of that, I just don't know if this team has any other needs that they can realistically fill. If you're getting Eduardo Rodriguez back, if you're getting Merrill Kelly back, you really don't need any more help in the starting rotation. The D-backs are good there as long as they feel good about getting those guys back. And we've still heard nothing but positive reports about their progress here over these last couple of weeks. And from a position player standpoint, I mean, earlier on our afternoon show, we were talking about Luis Rengifo. You try to come up with guys who could realistically be traded that would move the needle for this team and wouldn't cost a ton. And there just aren't really many guys out there that they clearly would accomplish that. So we'll find out in the coming days. Hopefully we'll get to talk to Mike soon and kind of get his perspective on what he wants to do from here. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if AJ Puck is the Diamondbacks' lone trade deadline acquisition. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that if that winds up being the case. I mean, this was the big need they had, and he certainly fills that need.
Joseph Davis in the comments is kind of disappointed with the potential we sent away. Hope it doesn't snake bite us. And yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to it. there is a way where everybody wins, right? And that is that those players go on to be very good players for the Marlins in the future, and that makes us regret it. But in the end, if the Diamondbacks somehow find a way to get to the mountaintop this offseason, I think there's going to be that ability to separate those two things and say, well, it was worth it, right? And honestly, I mean, the Diamondbacks are set up to be a very similar team that they are this year, the next year. I'm not saying like that everything's going to go great for them. Hell, we don't even know what August holds for this team at this point. But what we do know is that they're in a good position with a lot of these guys now, kind of solidified for next season and this season. And it really does feel like, again, their biggest need was the bullpen, the lefty in the bullpen, right? I mean, this shopping for your kid on Christmas, and you got the big present like early. You're like, man, now I just need some stocking stuffers and I'm good, but and again, there are some ways that they can still upgrade this team, but we take a look, and it's hard because a lot of the players on this Diamondbacks team are playing well, and they went out and they got platoons. They got guys like Randall Grichuk, and they got Jock Peterson. They got Gino now playing good baseball. I mean, nothing's going to happen to Corbin, no matter how good or bad he plays. He's always going to be out there being given an opportunity. There's some questions about the future of a few guys, and I think that, that's something that's a bridge you cross when you get to it. For now, you just know that these guys are here for this season. They're hungry, and they have experience now in the postseason, which is something that they didn't have next year. I don't know how that could impact them if they do make the postseason this year, but I think that what will very much impact this team is AJ Puck being a part of it, being a lefty out of the bullpen. And again, just giving them that other option besides Joe Mantiply to go to. He's been incredible. And I think somebody in the chat, I think Benjamin, asked to compare him to Tanner Scott. So since we are very high on Tanner Scott, would you mind, our guy Eric, by the way, EZE on the mic, on the ones and twos, would you mind pulling up just the reliever stats again for us for AJ Puck? Because I'm going to kind of compare them verbally here. We don't have a graphic ready for Tanner Scott. I mean, we did a few days ago, but this season, Tanner Scott has a 1.21 ERA and a 0.985 whip. AJ Puck a 2.08 ERA and a 0.76 whip. Like I think the idea here between Tanner Scott and AJ Puck is they're both the two best relievers, the left-handed relievers that were available on the market. And I think that, to be fair, there's a chance that Tanner Scott would have cost even more than this, even if this is seen as kind of a haul there for the Miami Marlins. I mean, we have no idea what Tanner Scott was going to cost, but we really thought that it was going to cost possibly too much for the Diamondbacks. Maybe it did.
Yeah, I mean, looking at comparing their opponent OPS real quick, Tanner Scott is at 438 this season. And then if we pull it up one more time for AJ Puck, I think it was 456. Yeah, 456. So, I mean, both of these guys, while in the bullpen role, of course, Tanner Scott's been in the bullpen the whole year, but for AJ Puck, while he's been in the bullpen role, I mean, these guys have been almost equally unhittable. And this is especially true for AJ Puck over his last 14 appearances. I tweeted these numbers out, Derek. They're absolutely insane. AJ Puck has not given up a single earned run over his last 14 appearances. If I can pull up those numbers here real quick, it's pretty remarkable stuff. AJ Puck is at 16 2/3 innings, 3 hits, not a single run allowed, 3 walks, and 25 strikeouts. Those numbers will play. That is pretty impressive stuff. He has only gotten better seemingly as the season has gone on. And another thing that's interesting with Puck is that he was on the injured list briefly. We mentioned that he opened the season in the starting rotation. He made 4 starts. It did not go well whatsoever. And then he actually was on the injured list with what MLB.com had listed as shoulder fatigue, which is a bit of an ominous injury diagnosis, but it didn't last very long. He was just on the IL for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then he came back and has been, working with the Marlins as a reliever ever since, and has been very, very good. So it seems like you definitely do not want to try AJ Puck in the rotation. The Marlins did that. It did not go well. The D-backs should not try that this year or probably in the couple of years to come. But in that bullpen role, he has been almost as good as Tanner Scott. I know the ERA doesn't quite match up there, but if you look at some of the peripheral numbers, he's been one of the best for sure.
Shout out, by the way, to our guy Kevin Haskey. He says, "Happy birthday, Tori Lavallo." Is that, I didn't know, today, July 25th, Tori Lavallo's birthday. What a present Mike Hazen got him. Now we know why this happened early, Jesse. Mike Hazen was scrambling. He forgot to get Tori something, and he's like, you know what? I'll just pull the trigger on that AJ Puck deal. That'll make Tori, that'll thrill him. That'll thrill him. Haskey also says, also let Strom cook. Drink water, Jesse. He's not wrong about that. You definitely should drink some water. I know you haven't drank enough water today, but the Diamondbacks, man, they got themselves a good one. And I know I can see, based on the reaction, there's a lot of people right now on Twitter that are not very happy with this trade, especially considering Davison De Los Santos, which he has been a guy that a lot of people have come to get excited about, is part of it. However, I implore you to at least look at the relief numbers, know that that's what the Diamondbacks are bringing him here for. And, you know, again, much like Ryan Thompson, like this, that was a huge acquisition that we just can't discuss enough. And I feel like even though this cost more, considering Ryan Thompson was, you know, just picked up, this definitely feels like a very similar move, in that the Diamondbacks bullpen, that is probably arguably the best it's ever been. It just got better.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen was such an asset for this team down the stretch last year and in the playoffs. Really, and I think this bullpen is now significantly better than that one, right? There was no Justin Martinez last year, not in the playoffs. Obviously, he pitched a few innings during the regular season. It didn't go real well for him. You know, taking that unit that was pretty darn good last year and adding AJ Puck to it, adding Justin Martinez to it. And then beyond that, like, Bryce Jarvis has been pretty good for this team. And also, it's worth mentioning yet again that once you get, you know, if and when the Diamondbacks get Eduardo Rodriguez and Merrill Kelly back in the rotation, that frees up some other arms to potentially move to the bullpen. Do we see Ryan Nelson become, you know, a long relief type for the D-backs at that point? Slade Ciccone, also, the D-backs recently decided to change his role to reliever. He's been doing that now down in AAA for a while. That's a role that I think he could be really effective in as well, given what we saw during his time as a starter, right? He was really, really good the first time through the order, and then things would fall off pretty dramatically after that. So this team has way more potential weapons in the bullpen than it did a year ago. And given the history of this franchise, Derek, that is a crazy thing to say. It is a crazy thing to talk about this bullpen being one of the best in all of baseball, given that this franchise has almost never had anything close to that, you know, going on almost 30 years of existence at this point. So it's, you know, there's still other guys that are going to have to come through and do their part for sure. And getting all the way to the World Series is much easier said than done, no matter how good your roster looks on paper.
Sure is.
This bullpen is up there with the best for sure.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the Diamondbacks continue to add any trade pieces, especially if the Diamondbacks add any more bullpen arms. It doesn't feel like they really need that at this point.
I think that would be getting a little greedy.
It's a hat on a hat, right?
With the potential for Slade Ciccone to slide in there and be pretty effective,
or
and Ryan Nelson to slide in there. It seems pretty unnecessary at this point for the team to go get another reliever. I'd be pretty shocked if that happened. And again, wouldn't be too surprised overall if this was the only move they made during the next 5 days. But we'll see, Derek. We'll see. Maybe Mike Hazen has something else up his sleeve.
Well, we definitely have something else up our sleeve, which is, you know, we're going to bring you more trade candidates anyway. We know we got our guy, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop talking about the trade deadline until the trade deadline has come and gone, which is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure to keep it locked here until then. Of course, we will be back tomorrow with a post-game show. Hopefully, I won't go to any more movies. I mean, if I don't go to any more movies, the Diamondbacks won't make any more trades. So I'll just refrain from going to the movies with Megaran anymore.
I think people in the chat would probably say that maybe you should. Maybe
I should
go to a whole lot of movies here.
Yeah, I'll see. Maybe we'll go see Twisters tomorrow. No free ads. But anyway, we thank you guys so much for being here. Make sure to join us for a post-game show on Friday and another post-game show on Saturday. Until then, We hope you guys have a wonderful night. You guys can follow us on Twitter. I'm at cap_caveman with a K. Jesse is at Jesse N. Friedman. Of course, our producer, Eric, is at Eric Ruby. That's ERIK. But of course, all roads lead to at PHNX_DBacks on Twitter for us, and at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for the main account. We thank you guys for your time. We appreciate you guys joining us for this emergency podcast. We'll see you again tomorrow. And until then, enjoy your evening. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you don't wait until the last minute to make your trades.
We all silly like the mayor.